So this is something I wrote up a long time ago about the parameters of Amir L'Nochri, and this is something which actually is always relevant, but especially relevant if you're spending time in a hotel or you're yantiv for Shabbos. So then these questions come up a lot, what you can and cannot say, and under what circumstance you could say to a non-Jew. Actually, I got an interesting call this morning, which led me to recall this article, which is that somebody called me up and said that in their neighborhood, where they're starting a service like we have in Monsey and several neighborhoods run by Chaverim, in which a non-Jew drives a vehicle through the neighborhood on Shabbos, and if somebody needs something, there's a designated house you can go to where the vehicle will stop, and when the vehicle stops, the person who lives in the house will tell them, oh, so-and-so from such and such address was here, and can you stop by their house and deal with XYZ issue? And the question, of course, is what are the issues which are legitimate to deal with? What are the issues which are not legitimate to deal with? You know, obviously for certain things you can employ a non-Jew, certain things you can't employ a non-Jew. What are the person himself who was supposed to flag down the car? He told me the way he's supposed to flag down the car is supposed to put a pylon outside his house. And if there's a pylon outside his house, so the car knows to stop there. So the question then is, under what circumstances could it put out the pylon, which is basically a form of Amir L'Nochri, right? You're telling the non-Jew to stop at your house in order for you to come in and get a message from you about whatever's going on. So under what circumstances can you stop him, and for what purposes can he actually stop? So we're going to go through this this summary, and it's starting with the general principles. One, it's prohibited to tell or even hint in a way that infers a command to a goy to do any malacha d'oraisa, which is an activity which is prohibited by the Torah itself, or the Rabbanon, or prohibited by Chazal on Shabbos. Okay, so that Chazal said for various different reasons. I mean, L'Nochri is also on Shabbos. They gave for the most simple way of understanding it, the goy becomes like your shaliach to do the malacha on Shabbos. He becomes like your agent, and Chazal said, not only shouldn't you do malacha on Shabbos, you should also not have an agent do malacha for you on Shabbos. Now, technically speaking, a shlichus la'akum, there is no such thing as shlichus for a non-Jew, but that's talking about shlichus for halachic functions, where you have the non-Jew has to perform an official act on behalf of the Jew. In that case, ein shlichus la'akum, a non-Jew can't take up a trumas and mitzvahs for you, and so on and so forth. But here it's just a question of him being an extension of you, like a yad arichta, an extended arm, so to speak. So Chazal answered that. They said, no, we don't want you to be able to do it either because you might come to the malacha yourself, or because it defeats the sanctity of Shabbos if you have a non-Jew going around doing everything that you can't do for you. Okay, so it's permissible to hint in a way that does not infer a command to a goy to do malacha on Shabbos. It's permissible to hint even in a way that infers a command to a goy either before Shabbos, do malacha on Shabbos, or on Shabbos, do malacha after Shabbos. So to hint to a non-Jew, and of course this is a general principle, there are many exceptions, to hint to a non-Jew to do malacha on Shabbos is permissible, but only in a way which doesn't infer a command. If it's a way which infers a command, so you cannot hint on Shabbos itself, but you can hint before Shabbos, for Shabbos, which means, by the way, you can't tell a non-Jew before Shabbos, I want you on Shabbos to do malacha for me. Or you can hint for a Jew on Shabbos to do the malacha for you after Shabbos. Okay? So, in any event, it's forbidden for Jew to derive benefit for any malacha done for him by a goy on Shabbos, which seems to be a very strange thing. What do you mean derive benefit? Well, that's the whole point. Why was she telling a goy to do a malacha for you on Shabbos if there was no benefit involved? We're allowed to derive benefits. So, the examples. It's permissible to say to a goy on Shabbos, it's hard to sleep when the light is on the room, but not, why didn't you turn off my light last Shabbos? Do you see the difference? The first one, it doesn't infer a command. It's saying over a story. The second one, it's implicit is, go turn off the light. Right? You didn't do it last Shabbos, do it this Shabbos. Okay? B, it's permissible to say, I can't read because there isn't enough light, or the house isn't lit up enough because only one candle is burning. Again, you're telling a story, right? Even though the second one is a little bit more direct. It's saying, well, there's only one candle burning, so you can't use the house properly. But not, do me a favor, there's not enough light in the room. When we say do me a favor, clearly that infers a command. You want them to do something about it. If there was previously no light at all in the room, it's permitted to derive benefit from the law of the Goy, even in a makom mitzvah, even when doing so, they'll perform some mitzvah. And that's the idea is if you have a room like this, which was hermetically it's not really hermetically sealed, but theoretically, right now, if you turn off light, it would be pitch dark. Now, it's not a good example because there could still be light from the hall. But if there was no light in the room without the non-Jew's activity, you wouldn't be allowed to read in this room. If he turned on light for you, even if you didn't ask him to turn on the light, if he turned on the light for you, you can't derive that benefit from him. So that means you can't read in this room. Now, why I said it's a bad example because if the door is open here, then there's ambient light from the hall, and you can read by that ambient light. So therefore, if the guy turns on the light, it's not like yesh mi'ayin. It's not that it's something from nothing. So therefore, you'd be allowed to actually read in the room. But if there was no light, it was impossible to read beforehand. And now he turned on the light for you, even though you didn't ask him to do it, you're now going to benefit from that.
So even though it's easier to read now?
Yeah, if it's easier, it's okay. If it's impossible till now it's possible, it's no good. Okay? C, it is permissible to say, I have no torn toilet paper, since paper may be used, albeit with difficulty, uncut. Okay, so again, that's like the ambient light, right? You can use toilet paper. It's not particularly pleasant, the idea to use toilet paper if it's not cut, but you can use it, and therefore that would not be an issue. D, before Shabbos, missile to say, Goy, why didn't you want last week to open the letters which came for me on Shabbos? Okay, so that's a direct command. Not a direct command. It's a direct implication. So that's okay to say before Shabbos. On Shabbos, I can't say it. Okay? Now, B, for a sick person, years ago, in the 1990s, many, many years ago, when Harry Potter series was coming out. So, they delivered the books on Shabbos. They usually came out on Shabbos, and so that if you pre-order it, so it came on Shabbos because that was the first day. So my kids would. It was a big hardship for them. That whole idea of coming on Shabbos, we wouldn't open it if it came on Shabbos. But one day, one of the times at least, the postman said, "I know you can't open it on Shabbos." So here he opened the package for us at the Harry Potter book, so my kids could start reading immediately on Shabbos. So that's okay, because you really can open a package and in a way which is makalkel, which according to some shittas, Rabbi Yaakov Emden specifically, you're allowed to do on Shabbos. We're machmir, we don't open letters on Shabbos, even if it's makalkel, unless we know it's something which is L'Tzorech Shabbos. And it could be, one could make the case that Harry Potter is L'Tzorech Gadol on Shabbos, but assuming it's not. So then, but still, since you can, L'Tzorech Gadol, you can be makalkel and open a package on Shabbos, so therefore, the fact that he opened it is not, is again, something where there's a way I could have done it myself, so therefore I could have a no from the fact that he opened the package for me.
What about trying to get air conditioner on?
We're going to get that. Okay. B, for a sick person, and that's actually the next section. For a sick person, for sick person's needs one may tell a guy explicitly, even to do malacha d'oraisa. The category of sick people is extended to include people who are suffering from cold weather conditions that require heating or hot weather conditions that require air conditioning. So if you have your room in the hotel is unbearably hot or cold, you can tell a non-Jew outright to turn up the air conditioning or turn up the heating. Chazal consider anybody who's sick, but anybody who's too hot or too cold. Gemara says, every circumstance befalls a person is b'dei shamayim except for heat or cold, because if it's too hot, you should go somewhere to cool down. If it's too cold, you should heat up, and that's considered to be something which is given over to you too to control yourself. So Chazal said, you know what? This is something which is very important and could even be pikuach nefesh, even if it's not pikuach nefesh. Even cold, you can tell a guy outright to to turn the air conditioning or heating on or off. C, to save svarim. To save svarim, including mezuzahs of fixed houses, one may tell a goy explicitly imdu malacha d'oraisa, which is a very, very important heter, which we have as manazeh, for any house of a Jew which belongs to, by definition has mezuzahs. So if you have a fire, you can tell a guy, go put out the fire. You can tell him, go come ride the fire engine, come put out the fire, because to save kisvei hakodesh, including mezuzahs to fix the doors of houses, you can tell a guy to do malacha d'oraisa. Okay. D, well, this is a case where great loss may be sustained. In cases where great loss is to the principal means not to the money you could make, but the actual value of the stuff you have, right? So if you might lose the principal, maybe sustained, it's permissible to hint, even a way that infers a command, to go to even do malacha d'oraisa. Such an example, anyone who puts out the fire won't lose. Now, it's quite clear that I'm saying, if you put out the fire, I'll pay you after Shabbos. So that's okay. So Chazal will make a case of great loss, not to say directly, but to infer in a way which hints the command, anybody who puts out the fire won't lose. Okay? E, cases where a Goyim may be told outright do malacha d'Rabbanan. If one case a Goyim may be told to outright do malacha d'Rabbanan, A, potential great loss. So before it's about malacha d'oraisa, right? Drive the fire engine over in order to put out the fire. Here it's about malacha d'Rabbanan, right? So putting out a fire on Shabbos is usually the Rabbanan, not the Raisa. Because the Rabbanan, the Raisa, Mechabe has to be Almanas Levire. You only chayav if you extinguish in order to later on reignite. If you put a fire in a house, it's not in order to reignite it. That's a pyromaniac. It's not in order to reignite it later on, right? So therefore it's only be the Rabbanan. So you can tell them explicitly, right? So potential great loss, great need of a mitzvah, arrival of unanticipated guests, where results of the Rabbanan Malacha could have been achieved by a Jew without any Malacha having been committed, or saving objects other than Sfarim from a fire. In all those cases, you can't tell them to do Malacha d'oraisa, but you tell them to do Malacha d'Rabbanan. Okay? So again, another example would be, if you tell you have stuff in your house which is burning, and the only way to save is to take it out to a Shus Rabbim d'oraisa, into a public domain. You can tell a non-Jew can't tell a non-Jew to tell that, do that. You can't tell a non-Jew to take it out to a public domain, but you can tell them to take it out to a carmelis, a place where it's also to carry the Rabbanan. Okay, so if you have a Chotzer she'enim ureves, case of the Gemara, Chotzer on Erev, you can tell the non-Jew to take the stuff out to there. For example, taking consider to shul where there's no eruv, removing chametz on Pesach from the house, carrying a valuable object that is muktzah, which not be removed on Shabbos, to a safe place. Okay. F, needs so that the masters are kept from sinning. The only way to defend the master's sin is by telling going to do malacha d'oraisa. It's permissible to do so. Let's say you found out that the meat which they sold in the city Erev Shabbos was treif, and if everybody eats their chulent, so then the Rabbi Yovel is the d'oraisa of tarfus, right? So you can tell a guy to go drive from house to house to tell people don't eat the chulent, because it's so helping say the Rabbi is the d'oraisa.
Can you take someone by wheelchair to shul if it's not Erev?
So I think we're going to get to it. Okay, if not, remind me. G, if a guy will do malacha d'oraisa, but not at your request, even if one knows that a guy will do malacha d'oraisa, of course, to fulfilling a request. For example, the guy was asked to wash the dishes, and he will heat up the water to do so. Nonetheless, since this malacha is not inherent in his activity, it's permissible to make such a request. So you're allowed, if you have a non-Jewish housekeeper, and on Shabbos you tell her to wash the dishes. You know she's going to use hot water. And you know she's going to heat up the water, you know she's going to do the hot water, use the hot water, which is a d'oraisa. But since she doesn't have to use that water, it's her convenience. It's not your problem. You tell her to clean the floor. You know she's going to use a vacuum cleaner. But as far as you're concerned, she can use a broom. It's her convenience. So therefore, it's not a problem.
Isn't the hot water cleaner better, so you liked it that she uses the hot water?
What?
The hot water really cleans the...
Doesn't matter, because if she scrubs enough, I'll be okay with it. Right? Look, if I would have done it myself, I would have done it with cold water, right? So if I wouldn't have the housekeeper, I'd have to do it myself. So it's not as if obviously everybody would prefer hot water, I prefer the vacuum cleaner, but since it can be done to a sufficient standard, By me, without a malacha d'oraisa, it's okay.
What about laundry? Could you tell her to wash the clothes? She could do it by hand.
No, because there's no, you can't wear clean laundry, or you can't wear laundry which is dirty, you can't wear on Shabbos. In other words, you can't, it's muktzah. Okay, a laundry which you would not wear because it's so dirty, it's muktzah. Right? So there's no head to actually have to do laundry.
So Shabbos you can't have to.
What?
So Shabbos
If she does laundry on her own, just because she wants to do laundry on Shabbos, that's her problem. But you can't tell her to do laundry. Okay? Okay? 8, twilight. In the twilight period, beginning of Shabbos, one may tell a goy explicitly even do malacha d'oraisa if the need is great, or if necessary for Shabbos or for a mitzvah. Happens to be, I wrote here beginning of Shabbos, the Aruch HaShulchan, Mishnah Berurah seem to have machlekes about it, but the Aruch HaShulchan says explicitly im or be'er shmashas at the end of Shabbos. In other words, after Shabbos, after Shkia, a certain amount of time, at least a half an hour, which is not considered, and chutzah, it's at least half an hour, which is considered to be be'er shmashas. It's twilight. It's either night or day. It's a suffix if it's night or day, I should say. So at that time, you're allowed to tell even do malacha d'oraisa, because it's like a fake. It's fake is the wrong term. It's like a suffix to Rabbanan L'Kula, right? It's a suffix, whether this is actually Shabbos, and it's the Rabbanan, the prohibition of telling the non-Jew to do malacha on Shabbos is the Rabbanan. So say for a suffix, the Rabbanan L'Kula, I can tell them to do malacha during that time.
What's the reason why we can't tell a guy? Why does the Rabbanan institute that?
What?
Why does the Rabbanan institute a prohibition against asking a guy to do something like that?
Either because you might come do it yourself, or because it goes against the spirit of Shabbos. It's like v'daber dovar. So if you talk about going to do malacha on Shabbos, Shabbos will be come like a weekday. Okay. I payment, employment, or work for self. One may pay a guy to work for working on Shabbos for a Jew, which was permissible. Okay. In other words, if obviously he was allowed to do the work for you, such as to be a waiter or something, you can pay for that work, but the monetary compensation should not be given until after Shabbos. Okay. What happens sometimes is that you have a maid or a housekeeper who works Erev Shabbos, and they finish on Shabbos, so you leave for them money somewhere. So that's not great. I do that too, but it's not great. Ideally speaking, you shouldn't even leave them money on Shabbos. But the main issue is paying them actually by hand. If you leave them money and say, there's money over there for you, it's not as bad as actually giving them the money itself. One's non-Jewish employee may not do work for Shabbos unless the guy is working there solely for the purpose of gaining free time for himself on a weekday. Even then, the work may not only be done on the guy's premises. Now, the story about, let's say you have a non-Jewish mechanic. He can work on your car on Shabbos, as long as you don't tell him to, right? If he wants to, it's convenient. He's only going to pick it up on Monday anyway. So he has enough time to work it on Sunday. But he wants to work on Shabbos, it's fine. But he can't come to your house to work on Shabbos.
What is different from a maid?
What? The maid is not doing something which is really ba'atzem asur, right? She might do an asur way, but it's not something which is ba'atzem asur. It's not which is actually asur. To fix the car is asur. Okay? So the maid, she's cleaning the house. She wants to make it more convenient for yourself. Okay, Chazal, let her do that. But the guy's fixing your car, or your plumbing, or whatever else it may be. That's something which is asur to do on Shabbos, right? Okay. 16. Well, may tell a guy even do malacha d'oraisa for his. Here. Thank you. When I tell a Jew to do malacha d'oraisa for his, which is the guy's benefit, turning out to the second page, guys sound good as long as the Jew does not explicitly tell the guy to use the Jews' appliances to do that malacha. So I say, hey, John, go fix your car. It's breaking down. That's okay. As long as I don't say, John, go fix your car. My tools are in the garage. Okay, so that's because you're not supposed to, although the tools themselves is a bad example, because tools are not necessarily intrinsically made from malacha. No, they really are. Yeah, you can't tell them to use, you can tell them to do the work, but not provide your resources to use the work. Okay, at least not explicitly. J, to benefit from a guy's malacha d'oraisa. If there's direct benefit to a Jew malacha d'oraisa performed by a guy for on Shabbos, pleasure and benefit is permitted for a Jew until enough time has have complete malacha if it is been begun after Shabbos has elapsed. So if you there's a classic case coming up, Motzei Shabbos, Motzei Yontif this year, you want to go and get Dunkin' Donuts. And on a kosher Dunkin' Donuts, the odds are that they're doing the baking for the Jews, right? Because, Motzei Pesach, they're going to be huge crowded. So you can't go to Dunkin' Donuts right after Shabbos is over. You have to wait until enough time elapses for the donuts have been made Motzei Shabbos. Right? Now, once that time has elapsed, you can have the donuts that are made on Shabbos as well. But it has to be Chdei Shiyasa, enough time has elapsed for the donuts to be able to be made on Motzei Shabbos. Okay? Examples. If a guy if a Jew directed a guy to Malachas D'Oraisa on Shabbos, the prohibition of benefit is so severe that, for instance, if the guy turned on the light, the Jew must leave the room so as not to derive pleasure from the malacha. Okay, that's actually not a great example because even if he didn't direct the guy to do the Malachas D'Oraisa, you still have to leave the room. So I chose a poor example there. But the point is that if any time you tell a guy to do Malachas D'Oraisa on Shabbos, and you should not have, so you can't derive any benefit from it. Okay? If the guy did the Malachas D'Oraisa without being asked, he did so for the benefit of the Jew, then the Jew must protest. If he did not protest, the Jew may derive indirect benefit from Malacha. What's indirect benefit? He may carry on a conversation by the light, but not read thereby. But if we're in this room where there was no light whatsoever, there's no ambient light at all before, right? And he turned on the light, so I still can't read. Because reading is direct benefit. But if I stand there and carry conversation, which I could have done anyway, so then that's okay. See, if the guy did not need to protest and nevertheless turn on the light, the Jew may even read thereby. So this again is not a great example, but the idea, because this I don't think this is actually correct, but I wrote here. I apologize because here, like we said before, this is only true where there was some ambient light beforehand. It was completely dark. The Jew can't read by that light. But if there was ambient light, and he could have read B'doichak, it was hard for him to read, but he could have read B'doichak. And now the non-Jew comes to turn on the light, and I don't turn on the light, but he turns it on anyway. So now I'm allowed to read by that light. Okay? Similarly, if a guy cooked food for a Jew on Shabbos, that food is muktzah, and no Jew may partake of it until enough time to have completed the malacha, if it had begun after Shabbos has elapsed. So that's the case of Dunkin' Donuts, right? You can't eat that food until enough time Yikdei has passed. If the Malachas D'Oraisa that was performed was Hotzah, forbidden carrying in a closed area, there's no need to wait until enough time to be completed that malacha that had begun after Shabbos has elapsed. Enough to be Hotzah Chazalko and malacha grua. It's not the same as any other malacha. Why? Because every other malacha, some changes happen in the object itself. And by Hotzah, it's just been moved from place A to place B. So therefore, it's more lenient than other malachas. Other malachas, where the guy cooks something for you on Shabbos, you have to wait b'chtei shiaseh. Where the guy just moves something for you on Shabbos, then you don't have to wait b'chtei shiaseh. What? Hotzah is D'Oraisa, sure. Yeah, she's covered, yeah. Although I don't seem to mention here, if the guy does bring something from outside the tchum on Shabbos for you, then you have to wait for Motzei Shabbos b'chtei shiaseh. For outside the tchum, because Chazal made a special gzeira by something which is brought out from outside the tchum. Okay. 19. A healthy Jew may derive benefit from malacha done by a goy for a sick person, as long as the goy did not do any extra malacha for the benefit of the healthy Jew, and the product of malacha is not, that should say muktzah. Okay, so let's say the goy had to cook something for the classic example is a goy plucked figs off a tree, right? But there are a bunch of figs on the cluster. I don't know if actually such an example. Grapes. Going to pick grapes off the tree for a sick Jew, right? And there are more grapes on the cluster than the sick person needs, right? So the malachas is malachas daraisa, but he did it anyway for a sick person, right? So therefore, that he'd be allowed the healthy Jew be allowed to have the rest of those grapes on Shabbos. Okay. Even if this were not met, there's no need to wait until enough time to have completed that malacha that begun after Shabbos. You don't have to wait b'chtei sheyaseh if it was done for a sick person. Malacha done by a goy for his own or other goy's benefit follows the same parameters outlined in Numbers 19 and 20. Right? It's not the same thing. The goy does malacha for himself as if he does it for a choyle. Same parameters. Examples: a light done by a goy for his own use, even if it is ordered to do permissible work for a Jew. Right? Then you're allowed to use that light. If the guy comes into this room is pitch black. The guy came in, he had to vacuum here. Right? So he turned on the light for himself. And he leaves the light on. When he leaves the room, that's okay. You're allowed to use that light. Right? Or water heating in a hotel other setting where it's clear the guy has no knowledge of or is not concerned with individual Jewish patrons. If you're in a hotel, not this hotel, right? For a hotel where they make coffee on Shabbos. Right. Well, this hotel also, this is a bad example. But you're in a hotel where they're making coffee on Shabbos, but they're not doing it for the Jews. They're making Starbucks for everybody. You can have it, even though they made it on Shabbos. Also, this is not directly related, but in this hotel, you can use the hot water on Shabbos. Because most of the hot water in the system is constantly being used by non-Jews for their own purpose. So the water system is constantly being used. You're not doing anything. You use the hot water on Shabbos.
Even though the whole hotel...
Right. It's because everything's being heated up at the same time. There's nothing being heated up specifically for you.
The boilers that pushes the water
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
What's the saying? Because there's Goyim there working here that are using that?
Yeah, all the time. Yes. Okay. Either Goyim were working or Goyim were staying here.
Is that all hotel standards?
What?
Would that be the same for all hotel spaces?
Yeah. Okay. There's a specific prohibition to take a hot shower on Shabbos, though. So
Right.
that's about. Yontif, it's okay to take a hot shower.
Is it okay?
I pass it, yes.
Full shower?
If you ask me, your local Orthodox rabbi might tell you it's also. If you ask me, I will tell you it's mutter. Okay.
What about shampoo and all that and soap? It's not
Shampoo you can use, you can't squeeze it out. You can dilute. Make sure it's diluted, so it's not being memachik, right? And then you can just scrub it in, but don't squeeze out your hair, and don't dry your hair. You don't have much hair, right?
Soap bars are not good.
Soap bars, Ashkenazim are machmir. Sfardim are mekel, Ashkenazim are machmir. Okay, benefit malacha done for both Jews and Goyim. In the majority of people, even in the minority, this is actually the case we were just speaking about. Even in the minority, in other words, that the malacha may be intended for them, even that minority, if the population for whom a goy does malacha are Jewish, right? Then the malacha is considered to have been done for the Jews. Okay, so the malacha is being done for the Jews, or because the majority of the guests in the hotel are Jewish, or even the minority if it's a significant minority. So then the malacha have been done for the Jews. If the majority of the people, even a significant minority population where goy does malacha are goyim, because the malacha was maybe intended solely for them, the malacha is considered to have been done for the goyim. In case of 50-50 population, the malacha is considered to have been done for the Jews. So again, this doesn't a hotel. The goy most of them using the hot water or whatever, doing it for their own purposes, not for the guests, right?
What's an example? What are they using it for?
Cleaning, right? So therefore, it has to be that a significant amount of the hot water is being done specifically for Jews, and that's usually not the case, unless there are a significant amount of guests, and it's being done for the guests. Okay, so then of course would be a problem.
They're cleaning for us, though. No?
What?
They're cleaning.
They're not cleaning for us. They're cleaning. They're hot water. Again, they clean with cold water. They're cleaning with hot water because it's easier for them to clean with hot water, right? Examples of ramifications: heat, light, and elevator use in apartment buildings. Note an additional factor, Maris Ayin, may be involved in elevator use. Okay, so or traveling by ship on Shabbos, right? The elevator use is complicated. I shouldn't put it in here because elevators have modern elevators are very complicated because they have load cells which measure the weight in the elevator, and there's the issue of where the excess electricity which is generated by the elevator when it's going down. Whether you're going down the elevator, but there's more problem going down the elevator going up. Are you aware of that on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Going up, there's more energy being consumed. That's not such a big problem, especially on Yom Tov for sure. But going down, there's an excess amount of energy being produced, and that energy usually goes to the building. It's not just grounded. It's going unless it's a real Mahadra Shabbos elevator. It goes to the building in order to power the lights, or any system that uses electricity in the building. So in essence, when you're going down an elevator, you're generating electricity, and it's nichole because the light which you're using is being powered by that electricity, right? So therefore, it's much more of a problem going down an elevator on Shabbos than it's going up an elevator on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Same principle. Okay, Yom Tov is not anyway. It might not be a problem anyway because I just take it back. Yom Tov is not a problem because Melechus Tochel Nefesh, but because the generating the electricity is not the problem in Yom Tov. The generating electricity is the problem on Shabbos, but again, it's more a problem going down than going up.
You don't know the Shabbos elevator?
What?
You don't know the Shabbos elevator?
So Shabbos elevators, again, according to what I'm saying, you can use Shabbos. It's easy to use Shabbos elevators going up than going down. The problem is, with the complication nowadays, is that in the old days you had an elevator operator, right? Now you have electric eyes. So if you don't have electric eye, if you disable electric eye, you have to have an elevator operator, even with Bisman Hazeh, right? So the question is, this electric eye, which is tripping when you get in the elevator and keeping the elevator door open, does that make it also, right? Because you're actually completing the circuit when you're working the elevator. Chajnis is for sure problem because of bonet. The question is whether it's problem according to the other poskim. Also, like I said, there are load cells in in the floor of any modern elevator to minimize the use of electricity. They measure the load as it's going on. So therefore, those complications make Shabbos elevators an extremely complex thing. Where you have an old type elevator which does not have electric eye and does not have load cells, there would be much less of a problem. Okay?
Question: If you don't have a Shabbos elevator, there's a guy standing there. Can you ask him to press button 5?
It's still a problem.
Not a problem.
It's still a problem.
It's a problem.
Yeah. Because again, modern elevators are like computers.
But going up, let's say going up.
Going up is less of a problem. But it's still not. It's still what? It's still an electric eye problem, right? You have to make sure. You would have to make sure to get in the first couple of seconds before the electric eye actually is going to stop the door from closing.
If you press number 5,
What?
If you have to press number 5, there will be a mirakum or not?
Yes, it would be a mirakum.
Will be a mirakum.
Yeah. So it'd be for a person's handicapped or something like that, it'd be permitted. Right? So godol. For tzarcholim. Okay, it's a very complicated thing, elevators. A real Shabbos elevator, as you know, is supposed to stop every floor on its own. So nobody has to tell anybody anything.
I took a ground floor this year for Pesach.
It's very smart. Okay. Okay, so the traveling by ship on Shabbos is a good example, but even the Gemara itself, obviously the people who travel by ship on Shabbos, long trips, went over Shabbos, the great Tanoim and Amoraim traveling on Shabbos, because the Malach is being done primarily for the non-Jews. Okay? And that basically is the indirect benefit of a Goy's Malach, and indirect benefit of a Malach of a Goy is permissible. So, examples. Here's with the Harry Potter example. Reading a letter which is inside an envelope owned by a Goy on Shabbos, it is there mistletoe to go in a way which does not infer a command to open a letter which is permitted to read on Shabbos. Be eating food which is inside a can opened by a Goy on Shabbos. Is there mistletoe to a Goy in a way that does not infer a command to open a can on Shabbos, even if one person refrains from doing so? Now, most people nowadays, I believe, go with the post-game that hold you can open a can as long as you perforate the can beforehand, so it's not considered to be a kalim when you open it up. But even if you aser even if you aser the opening of a can on Shabbos, since it's indirect, you're not getting hanoah from the can. You're getting hanoah from the contents of the can. So that's okay. Right? Being in a room which was prior to going to lighting candles was possible, at least with difficulty, right? Then that's considered to be indirect benefit, and that's okay. Benefit of goyim mochad rabbanon. If there's direct benefit to a Jew from mochad rabbanon performed by a goyim from Shabbos, pledge for the benefit is paid for that Jew, and all members of his household, till enough time has been completed on malacha. If it had begun after Shabbos has elapsed. Any other Jew, but that's only for himself. Any other Jew may derive benefit pledge from that malacha immediately. So if a guy did a malacha rabbanon for you it's also until b'chtei shiasa. But anybody else is allowed to derive benefit immediately. The product of malacha is not considered muktzeh even for the Jew for whom the malacha was done. Which is another leniency. Example ramifications. Objects brought from beyond 2,000 amos, right, which is malacha rabbanon. One is permitted beyond 2,000 amos. One is permitted to traverse on Shabbos, mechutz tchum, through the rabbanon public domain, which is that was one example. Second example is mechutz rabbanon. It was brought through from a Carmelist on Shabbos, all right, or bought on Shabbos. The guy went and bought you a newspaper on Shabbos, which is mechutz rabbanon. On newspaper, all these things are also for you until after Shabbos, but mutter for anybody else. Okay, so say by saying they bought you a newspaper on Shabbos, or they bought something from a Carmelist, or just Ram Drabanan for you on Shabbos, right? So the all these things for you it's usher, but for any other Jew it's permitted immediately. For you it's usher to b'chtei shiasa, for any other Jew it's permitted immediately. And psik ratio, it's permissible to direct the guy to do some act, even if the malacha will result automatically. Even if the raisa, if the act itself is mutter, which is an amazing kula. Look at this. Now it's telling him to open a refrigerator door, even though the motor light will turn on as a result. That's a great leniency, right? You have a refrigerator which you can't open because there's a light which goes on, right? But you can tell the guy to open it. Because if you can't still flick a light switch, because then you tell him to do the action malacha. But opening a door and the light will go on, that's a psik resha. It's an automatic result, but it's a result. It's not the direct act. So therefore, you can tell a non-Jew to open the refrigerator door with the light on Shabbos for you. Okay, it's a great hula. Remember that one. Or to put a cob or any pot of food to heat up on a stove, which will turn on automatically. We're machmir not to put things on in stoves, even they're going to turn on a Shabbos clock on Shabbos. So, good question why we're machmir that. It's not so pashut. There's a story the Chasam brought down the name of the Chasam Sofer that he told over that he was a kid he remembered when he was a kid in Frankfurt. So he had in the shul they had a long fuse, which they lit on Friday night, and it burned. The fuse burnt throughout Shabbos. Until Shabbos morning, it finally hit the fuel, turned on, and it brewed coffee on Shabbos. So the Chasam Sofer remembered that this is how they used to brew coffee on Shabbos. So that, by the way, once I have a coffee, I'm going to give you a tremendous kula, which I just read, which I was always afraid to pass him like, but I saw somebody else passing that way, so I'm hiding behind him. Come in a second. But so that really is the idea of a Shabbos clock. The long fuse is the same idea as a Shabbos clock, but nowadays we're machmir not to put things on a blech, which is off, which a Shabbos clock is going to turn on. But to tell a non-Jew to do it, you can do it again. For him, it's an inevitable result. But right now, it's not happening. So therefore, you'll have to tell him to do that. Now, what's a big heter? Big heter, which I always thought is a davar pasha, but I never saw it inside until the last time, the Journal of Local and Contemporary Society. I published an article there, and there was somebody else published an article on coffee. And he wrote that there is no prohibition on making drip coffee on Shabbos. I mean, if you have a filter cone, and you want to make ground, assuming there's no problem of mevashel, you make it a kli shlishi, right? So the grounds. So you can pour hot water over the grounds on Shabbos into a filter cone, and then drink the coffee. And there's no issue of mishamer or borer, because the water just goes straight through. And that's a more explicit Mishnah, right? Mishamer Masayayin. You're allowed to pour water through dregs of wine on Shabbos, so it goes straight through and it collects the taste of the wine. So here too, you're allowed to pour the hot water from the kli shlishi into a cone of coffee, regular coffee grounds, and drink it on Shabbos. Okay? You see in the hotels, they always give instant coffee on Shabbos. They don't have to. They actually have drip coffee. Okay, what the people would say it's not kosher. Anyway, finally, telephone conversations. When you carry a long distance telephone conversation with a goy, even the goy is located at times where it is already or still is Shabbos. This is true also of a fax machine, emails, anything of that sort. It's not considered Amir Lakum, but you to send a message to a non-Jew who's in a place where it's not Shabbos. Because for you, a place where it's Shabbos, I'm sorry. Even though there at Shabbos, since by you it's not Shabbos, it doesn't matter that there it's Shabbos. It all goes after you. Where it's a Jew, there's a Lifnei Iver issue. Obviously, you can't do that, right? But if there's no Jew involved, you're just talking, you're on customer service with, of course, with India, right? And in India, it's Shabbos. It doesn't matter. Because since where you're talking, it's not Shabbos. On the other side, it's a goy, you're fine.
If I want to call England, the 5 hours ahead, and say Shabbos, Shabbos to my mother, Shabbos, for me it's not Shabbos, but it's Shabbos, would be a problem?
If she gets on the phone?
She gets the phone recording.
Oh, no, it's not a problem.
Problem?
No, she can hear the recording, it's not a problem.
Right.
Yeah. There's no difference between Kohen Beishama, it's also perhaps because Shvisas Kalim. But no, even that would be Rav Ashkelon.
All the facts about later, they know the same thing for me, Shabbos, that's not Shabbos, would not be a problem?
Won't be a problem.
You can take it out of the fax machine.
Yeah, right. Some people say, for reasons I never understood, they want to say it's called moilid, right? It's like muktzah because there was no printed paper before Shabbos. Doesn't make any sense to me. Because there was paper beforehand, there was ink beforehand, not creating anything new. The fact that you're putting the ink on the paper. It would be the rice of kaiseh, fine, but it's not kaiseh because it's not Shabbos. So I never understood how people make a problem out of it. Beats me. I hold this mutter. Okay? Shkoyach Rabbi Yisrael. Thank you.
What do you recommend? It happens sometimes where the light of the refrigerator turns on. So you have to cover it. It's always on, let's say, and then you have a cover that keeps it off. And let's say it gets removed.
So if it's a Torah gadol, you won't have food for Shabbos,
Yeah,
right?
It's going to spoil. You leave the fridge open. What are you going to do?
No, if it's open, you have to let it spoil.
You have to let it spoil.
Yeah.
You tell the guy.
Right? You tell them not to go, yeah, but you can't do it yourself.
Right. So you tell could you just close the fridge and not open it? Again?
Yes. No, you can't close it on Shabbos. I thought the other way around. If it's closed, you need to get food for Shabbos. Then you can open the shinui. But you can't close it. Because opening is Tzorach Shabbos, but closing is not Tzorach Shabbos.
Do you have to hint to the guy? Could you tell the guy?
What?
Do you have to hint to the guy?
In which case?
To turn off the light. Meaning, let's say like...
No, acquaintance you don't, no.
So you just tell straight up.
Right, because that's a psik ratio. You're allowed to tell a non-Jew to do something which is an inevitable result as long as it's not the actual thing.
Well, I mean, you want him to turn off the lights,
But you're not turning the light. He's closing the fridge door. He's not turning the light. You want to unscrew the light?
Unscrew the light.
No, that you have to hint. You can't turn it right.
So if you have a fridge that has a light and forgot to close it, what's the story of the shayk? It has only open to a goy?
You shinui.
You know what the shinui?
If you can't get a goy, you can do it's our gadol. You can do the shinui.
But then you can't close it.
Yeah.
And then you don't know Shabbos.
Yeah, that's not Tzorach Gadol anymore. Tzorach Gadol is Tzorach Shabbos. The reason why the article that's actually a big machlokes is Mishnah Berurah and Aruch HaShulchan. Much more the rare case Mishnah Berurah is actually Meko. Where Malcolm Tzorach Gadol, right? Can you do Amir La'akum? No, I'm not talking about Shina for a moment. I'm talking about Amir La'akum by the Raisa, the Malcolm Tzorach Gadol or not. So the Aruch says you can, and the Mishnah Berurah passes like the Aruch. The Aruch HaShulchan says you can't. What?
If to go to.
Yeah. So now, is if you want to, if let's say you're stuck in a hospital, you have to go to the hospital on Friday night. And, if you don't take a taxi home, right, you're going to start for the waiter to write down what he wants for his benefit, not for your benefit, right? He wants to remember, but you're supposed to serve. You can remember. It's like we said before about he wants to use hot water to do the dishes. You want to write it down, that's your problem. As far as I'm concerned, you should remember it.
You'll remember incorrectly.
What?
You'll remember incorrectly.
Even when they write it down, they get it incorrect. So therefore, that's not it doesn't help. Okay.
This is just a little bit of a random question, but if you work in a firm that has Jews and non-Jews, and let's say that they're working over, so the Jews stop working on Friday afternoon, but the Goyim work over the weekend. Can you tell, if let's say, like I guess, can you tell someone to do work for you so you can review it after Shabbos?
So again, like he said before, if it's before Shabbos, you can tell him with a command which is indirect to do the work for you. Okay, you never tell him directly to do it. But you say indirect, like, do me a favor, this work needs to get done.
Right, so have it ready for me after,
Yeah. But also, if you tell it, another thing is that, I didn't get this here really, but if you're allowed to give your car to a mechanic Erev Shabbos, as long as there's enough time for him to do it before or after Shabbos, right? It's the same thing here. If you tell him on Friday, please have this done for me on Monday, even though you know it's going to do it on Shabbos, that's not your...
I'm talking about a case where you're getting it right after Shabbos.
So then, yeah, that has to be that you can't tell him directly. It has to be indirect.
Yeah. And you have to worry about a non-religious Jew? Because there's a lot of non-religious Jews that work there.
If you know he's a non-religious Jew, it's a problem. If you don't know he's not a religious Jew, you still have
They're
a...
not doing the work for you. They're doing it for the firm that you work for as well.
True.
But does that make it better?
No, not really, because it's work which you were supposed to do. So...
It's work that they have to do so that you could review, which is part of the...
Okay, then that'd be okay. They're doing their work, you're just reviewing it.
They're doing their work, but you're
Yeah.
telling them that I want it Saturday night.
That's their work. You're saying, I want to do my job on Saturday night.
Right, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's something else, right?
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah. Generally speaking, there's there are a lot of cases like that. Like a mailman, he doesn't work for you, right? The mailman brings the mail on Shabbos. He's not doing work for you. He's doing work for the UPS. Same thing. They're working for their company. Just happens to be that it looks like they're working for you. They're not working for you. Yeah. So it's not me.
Yes, is the government, it's your tax money, no?
No.
That's a good tax money.
No. First of all, it's not supported by taxes anymore, right? The U.S. Postal Service is independent, free. That's why they lose so much money, because they don't get supported by taxes.
They work badly now.
Yeah. Okay, everybody says shkoyach. Yesterday I gave a shir about